We begin the Gemara today at the bottom of Daf Nun Zayin Amud Beis. In the middle of a sugya here, the Gemara is discussing a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel, whether yesh chuppah lepsulois or not. What this means is, if a kohen did a chuppah, not kedushin, just a chuppah for a woman which is puzzle to him, but that would mean an almana to a kohen gadol or a grusha to a regular kohen. So the question is, this woman was a bas kohen. And because she's a bas kohen, she was by her father's house, she's able to eat truma. But now that this kohen, which she's puzzled to, made a chuppah for her, and as from that chuppah she's destined to then have relations with her bia, so does the chuppah itself passel her from eating truma? So Rav said, yes, it does, and Shmuel says it does not. Now the Gemara here will bring a third opinion about this, Rami Bar Chama, and Rami Bar Chama will connect this to the machlokes we had in the Mishnah regarding a case where a kohen makes a kedushin for a woman that's puzzled to him. Not a chuppah and not bia, but kedushin. So in the Mishnah there was a machlokes between Rab Meir and Rab Shimon and Rab Elazar, whether because through the kedushin she's destined then to come to bia, so that itself puzzles her. That's what Rab Meir that is says. Rab Shimon and Rab Elazar says no. Just the kedushin alone does not passel her. Adarabah, the kohen is kohen her through this kedushin, and she can eat truma. So, as we'll see here in the Gemara, Rami Bar Chama will say that these two things are the same. So, Zok the Gemara, Rami Bar Chama, yesh chuppah lepsula, is this question of whether a kohen does a chuppah for a woman that's passel to him, whether she can eat not truma or not. Banu lamachloikis Rab Meir v'Rab Elazar v'Rab Shimon. So this will be the same machlokes of Rab Meir and Rab Elazar and Rab Shimon in the Mishnah. Le Rab Meir, according to Rab Meir's opinion, the Omar, he said, Kiddushin, pasli, that if a kohen does a Kiddushin for a woman that's pasel to him, so it pasels her from eating trumah. So chupanami pasla. The same thing is also if you do just a chuppah without Kiddushin, but just a chuppah, which is the yichud, and that's close to the bia, that through the yichud you come to bia, so that will also passel her from eating truma if she was a bas kohen and she was able to eat truma before. Rabbi Elazar and Rab Shimon Damri Kedushin Lai Pasli. Rabbi Elazar and Rab Shimon say that the Kedushin alone does not passel her from eating truma. That's only if there was actual bia. So too chupanami Lai Pasla. So too a chuppah, which was not yet bia, just a chuppah, the yichud, that also does not passel her from eating truma. So he's saying that it's the same machlokes as the Mishnah. But the Gemara here asks on this, l'chayre, it's not the same machlokes. How could you compare a case of a kohen just doing kedushin for a woman that's passel to him to this case where he made a chuppah for her? Dilma, maybe I could say it's not the same, and I can ask you both from the opinion of Rab Meir and from the opinion of Rab Elazar and Rab Shimon. The reason why Rab Meir there says that it passels her from eating truma ela b'kiddushin, that's only by kiddushin. Why? The kani law. Kiddushin is a much more significant thing. When you make a kiddushin, there's actually a kinyan in this woman. She becomes your wife she's an Eishes Ish already. So that's much closer to the bia. So therefore it passels her. A chuppah is just a yichud without any kinyan whatsoever. So then, maybe this does not passel her from eating truma. Hinami, or the Gemara says a different svara according to Rabbi Elazar and Rab Shimon. At kan lekami Rabbi Elazar and Rab Shimon hasam. When Rabbi Elazar and Rab Shimon said regarding they only said hasam ela b'kiddushin. Only by kiddushin they said that it will not passel her from eating truma. Why? The lekrevi lebia. Because Kiddushin, on one hand, you're right, Kiddushin is a significant thing, it's a kinyan, but Kiddushin is not so close to the relations with her husband and wife, because what happens usually after Kiddushin? At least in those times, after Kiddushin, the marriage could be a year later, it could be a long time later, she goes back to her father's house. Ava chuppah, the kreve lebia, but chuppah, which according to most Rishonim means yichud, so that's very close to bia. So maybe hachanami de pasla. Maybe here Rabbi Elazar and Rab Shimon would agree that this does passel her from eating the truma. So therefore, the case of just making a chuppah for a woman that's passel, and the case of doing kiddushin for a woman that's passel to this kohen cannot be compared. Ella says the Gemara, if you want to say that there's a machlokes tanoim here, beplukte dahani tanoi. So this case about a chuppah for a woman that's passel to the kohen, whether she eats truma or not, is right here, a machlokes tanoim in this braisa, pretty clear in this braisa. The Tanya, it says in the braisa as follows: Nisu zu v'zu. There were two women that got married to a kohen. Ksheires psulois. And with these two women, one is kosher and one is passel. Then the Braisa says, Oy, shenichnesu l'chuppah. Or, it wasn't a nisuin. Nisuin means a full marriage. They just entered into chuppah. He brought these women, a kosher, an apostle, into chuppah. V'loy nivalu. But there was no bia yet. Oichlais mishalai. So the first halacha the Braisa says is, because he was misyachet with them, he did a chuppah, so therefore, oichlais mishalai means he has to feed them. That's the obligation of a husband, to feed his wife. And also, v'oichlais betruma. And also they can eat truma. If he's a kayin, so through the fact that he made a chuppah for them, so they can eat truma. And over here in this Braisa, it mentions even psulais. Right? He made a chuppah for psulais, and they can eat truma. So this is the first opinion in the Braisa, where it's clearly saying that even for psulais, just with chuppah, they eat truma. Now the Braisa continues. This is the Gemara actually. The Gemara explains, clarifies pshat in this Braisa. Nichnesu. It said in the Braisa that there were two cases here. One case was nichnesu, that they entered into chuppah. Now Miklal, so from that I understand that when it says nisu, before that in the Braisa, it said nisu, that they fully got married. That means nisu mamish. They fully got married, not just chuppah, but also bia, full marriage. So, but the question is, how could you say such a thing? How could you say nisu means nisu mamish? What's the question? If you're saying that by a psula, this is a woman that's possible to the kain, there was nisu mamish, that he had beer with her, for sure she can't eat truma. Everybody agrees that a kain that gets married to an almana, a kain gadol to an almana, a grusha to a kain hedyet, where he passels her, she becomes a halala, for sure she can't eat truma. So how could this Braisa say that even for a psula, where it was nisu mamish, that she would eat truma? So the Gemara clarifies, you're right, it's not two different cases in the Braisa. The way you have to read it is, elolav, the pshat in this Braisa is, the Braisa starts off saying nisu, that he married her, and then when the Braisa says nichnesu l'chuppah, before in the Braisa it said oy shenichnesu l'chuppah. It's like a second case, but now the Gemara is saying it's not oy, rather it's kagain, meaning that the Braisa is clarifying that when I'm telling you that a psula to a kayin could eat truma, that's only if there was a chuppah without being boil her. That's the opinion of the Tanakama. So v'katani, what does the Tanakama here say? He has to feed them, and also vaychlis betruma, a passel marriage here, but still, just because it was only chuppah, it does not passel her, so and she could still eat truma. Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Brokai, Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Brokai, he says, Kol shebiyasa machilasa, if he would have relations with her, and she would be able to eat truma after that, so then chuppah machilasa. Just with chuppah alone, she could also eat truma with him, but v'chol she'ein biyasa machilasa, if she's possible to get married to him, and therefore after the bia, she would not be able to eat truma, so then ein chuppah machilasa. Just with the chuppah alone, before bia, she also can't eat truma. So you see here clearly Rabbi Shmuel is saying that the chuppah passels her, just like the bia would passel her, the chuppah would also passel her. So you see here clearly this machlokes tanaim regarding this subject. So the Gemara says, not necessarily. How do you know that's the pshat on what Rabbi Shmuel is saying here? Dilme, maybe Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broike, Rabbi Meir svirelei. Maybe he holds like Rabbi Meir, the Amar, that said that kiddushin loy achla, that after you made a kiddushin for a woman that's puzzled to this kayin, so because of the kiddushin, you can't eat the truma. So not what the Gemara is basically saying is, maybe say that the case of the Braisa over here is not that you did only chuppah. Maybe the case of this Braisa is that he made Kiddushin first and then Chuppah. The Gemara here is talking about a question about a Kayin that made only a Chuppah for a Psula. And that was the machlokes of Rav and Shmuel and Rami Bar Chama, whether that passes this woman of eating Truma. Maybe in this Braisa, Rabbi Shmuel is speaking about a case where he made Kiddushin and Chuppah. And it's really the Kiddushin which is the reason that she can't eat Truma, like Rabbi Meir's opinion, that once you make Kiddushin, she's destined to get married to him, so therefore she can't eat. But the Gemara says, how does that fit into the lashon of the Braisa? If so, hi kol she'ein biyasa machilasa. Why is Rabbi Shmuel saying that if the bia is not machal, so therefore ein chupasa machilasa, that with the chuppah as well, she will not be able to eat truma? He should have used a different lashon. He should have said, kol she'ein biyasa machilasa, that if with the bia you can't eat truma because she's possible to get married to him, ein kaspa machilasa. So then even the money that you give her for kiddushin, or maybe kaspa machilasa means a little different. Kaspa means the fact that she becomes kinyan kaspai. Through kiddushin, he owns her, and she becomes like, he acquires her, she can't eat truma either. So why are we focusing on chuppah? If the main point of Rabbi Shmuel here is mitzad the Kiddushin, like Rabbi Meir's opinion, so it's not about the chuppah at all. So the Gemara says that's not a question. Maybe still this is what Rabbi Shmuel means, but Dilma, but maybe Aidi the Amar Tanakama chuppah, because the Tanakama was speaking about a case of chuppah, and therefore he said regarding the chuppah that after the chuppah she could still eat truma with him. So Amar Iu Nami chuppah. He also uses the term chuppah, but what he really meant to say is that if there was a kiddushin before, it's mitzad the kiddushin that she will not be able to eat truma with this kain if she's puzzled to him. So therefore, the Gemara is basically saying there's no raya from this braisa that this case regarding the chuppah by a woman that's puzzled to the kain is a machlekes of these two tanaim. Could be Rabbi Shmuel speaking about a case where there was a kiddushin. The Gemara continues in this inyan. Amar Rav Amram said, Hal Milsa, this exact subject was speaking about, Amalan Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes said it to us, and then he told us that he illuminated our eyes that there's a source for this halacha that we're discussing from a Mishnah in Masechta Saita. What did he say? Yesh chuppah lepsulais, that a kain that makes a chuppah for a woman that's puzzled to him, so that chuppah is significant enough of a relationship, close enough to be that it passes her from eating truma. And v'tana tuna, and he brought us a raya from what it said in a Mishnah regarding a Saita. What's the Mishnah in Saita? So the Mishnah there says, Amen. It says in the pasuk, when you make this woman swear regarding the fact that she did not have any relationship with anyone else. So the pasuk says, Va'amra isha amen amen. Amen means shalei satisi arusa. I did not have any relationship with anybody when I was an arusa, which is after the first stage of marriage, or nesua, when I was fully married, or even a shemeres yavam, in a case when I was still waiting to get nisyavim, knusa, or after the yavam already married me. Now, in other words, the double lashon of the pasuk, amen, teaches me that once she's already drinking the waters, she has to come and swear and say that she didn't have any relationship with any of these women, any of these situations, that is, in arusa, nesua, and so on. Now the Gemara is going to focus on arusa. Frag the Gemara, hi arusa heichidami. When we're saying over here that the halacha of Saita applies even to a case when she was an arusa, how is that possible? And there's a few problems with this, as the Gemara is going to explain over here. And after the Gemara resolves all the problems, it's going to come back to the raya where you see over here that the chuppah itself has a significance even by a kain for that the psula, as we'll see. Okay, so what's the problem over here of the halacha of Saita by an arusa? So how does every Saita begin? Every Saita begins with the warning that the husband warned her not to go with another person. So if you're going to say the case of an arusa here, that she's swearing that she had no relation with anyone when she was an arusa, means that he had warned her after he was an arusa, she was an arusa. And the Bach adds to this, ve'istatra, and she also, while she was an arusa, she went with another person privately, and v'kamashkela keshehi arusa, and also he's giving her to drink these waters of the Saita when she is an arusa. That's what it means over here, that Amen. We learn from this pasuk that the halacha of Saita applies even to an arusa, but the Gemara says that can't be. Arusa bas mishtehi, and arusa, there's the halacha of Saita that she drinks the waters of a Saita apply to that stage of marriage. But Vatnan, there's a Mishnah in Saita as well that clearly says, Arusa v'shemeres yavam, loy shaisais v'loy noitles ksubah. That both an Arusa and a shemeres yavam, she does not drink any water of the Saita, and also at the same time, she just has to get divorced, and she doesn't get any money of the ksubah. So there's no halacha of her drinking any waters of the Saita regarding a case when she's still an Arusa. So what's the pshat in this Mishnah? Ella, so we're going to have to say the case over here is the Kanila Keshehi Arusa. He warned her when she was an Arusa, and then Veistatra, she went privately with this person, and then the Kamashkela, when is he giving her these waters to drink as a Saita, Keshehi Nesua, after he got married to her. So first her husband got married to her, and now he's giving her the waters to drink. Says the Gemara, but not as another problem. Mi batkila maya, in such a case, will the water come and be able to check and see what she did, if she actually had a relation with this other person? The water is ineffective. Why? Because Vatanya, it says in the Braise, v'nika ha'ish me'avain, and the man, which is the husband, has to be clean from any aveda. Only then does the water work. So the Gemara learns from this, bizman sha'ish menuke me'avain, if the man is clean from any aveda, hamayim beit kenesishtay, then the water will work for the wife. It will inspect her, will see if she had a relation with another person. But if he's not clean, it is not it doesn't do anything for his wife. What does that mean? It means that after she went with that other person privately, and now she turns into a saita, the man is not allowed to have any relations with her anymore. So what's the case of here? You're saying that the kinui, he warned her when she was an arusa, she went privately with another person when she was an arusa, and she already became a saita, and now afterwards the husband went and got fully married to her, which means that the husband did have relations with her, the husband did bia with her after she already became a saita. So then he's not menukim avin. He's not allowed to have relations with her after she's already suspected of being a saita. So that can't be the case either. So now we finally come over here to the case of chuppah that we were speaking about. Ella, so l'chayra, the only way to explain that Mishnah there would be, the kani la keshehi arusa, he warned her when she was an arusa, ve'estatra, and she did nevertheless go with that person and concealed herself, hid it privately with that person. And now, v'nichnasa l'chuppah, and now the husband married her, but no bia, because then there would be no saita. But v'nichnasa l'chuppah, he brought her into chuppah, which means yichud. But v'loy nivala, but he was not bailer. He's not allowed to be bailer. Actually, she's puzzled to him once she had a relation with someone else. And after he brings her into yichud and he makes a chuppah for her. What does that mean? He's now considered to be married to her, as the Gemara said before, that the whole din of saita is only tachas isheich. Right, he has to be married to her. So shmamina, what do we see from here? Yesh chuppah lepsulais. That the chuppah, without any bia, is significant enough that he's considered to be married to her. So from here is a raya to the case that we were speaking about before. So Rashi explains the comparison of the Gemara is, over here, this husband that's making a chuppah with his wife, he's making a chuppah in such a way that he's possible to have any relations with her. He's not allowed. She's already suspected of being a saita. And nevertheless, just the chuppah alone makes her his wife, that now she's tachas isheich, and he can give it to drink the waters of the saita. So similar we could say regarding a bas kayin that has a chuppah with a kayin and she's puzzled to him. So even though it's a chuppah and she's puzzled of having bia with him, nevertheless that chuppah is significant enough that she becomes his wife, and she would become puzzled to eating truma. That's the raya from this Mishnah that Rav Ashi said. He illuminated their eyes, or Rav Sheshes rather. He said that you see over here from this Mishnah, this halacha. So the Gemara says, wait, there's still another problem with that Mishnah. So Rava said about the raya from that Mishnah, the Tizbira, is this a good raya? Is this Mishnah a Mishnah that we can accept, that's understood, that could be explained? But for Hakiyasa Rab Acha Bar Chanina Midroime, Rab Acha Bar Chanina came from the south. So Asa he came, and Va'isa Masnita Biyadei, he brought another braisa which puts another condition to the whole halacha of Saita and makes a big problem with this Mishnah here. What's that other condition? Mi bal'odei isheich. What does mi bal'odei isheich mean? Mi shekadma shchivas baal lebayil v'loi shekadma shchivas bayil lebal. The halacha of a saita only applies if the husband was married to his wife and he first had relations with her, and after that she went and had relations with someone else, or at least we suspect her for that. She went and secluded herself with someone else. But not in a case like over here, where she already went privately with someone else in the time when she was an arusa, and only afterwards you made a chuppah with her, so the husband himself was never bailer before. In such a case, there's no halacha of saita at all. So this Mishnah is a problematic Mishnah anyways. So you can't bring any raya from this Mishnah. Maybe we have to erase this Mishnah. There's no way to explain this Mishnah. So the Gemara now is going to try to fa'em for this Mishnah in order to explain that it is a good Mishnah, and therefore it will be a raya to this halacha that we're saying here, that yesh chuppah lepsulais. Says the Gemara, Amar Rami Bar Chama. So Rami Bar Chama says, so in order to explain how the husband already had relations with her before, so mishkachas the case is kagain shaba alea arusa beveis avia. This arusa, even before he went and gets married to her, even before he makes a chuppah and bia, which is the second stage of marriage, in the first stage of marriage, this arusa still lives with her father, still lives with her parents. He goes and has relations with her when she's in her father's house. Not as a marriage though. He goes and has relations with her there, b'derech znus. Right? So it's not yet a marriage. It's not yet a chuppah. And then after that, she went and secluded herself with this man, and she becomes a saita. So the man, the husband, already had relations with her before. Says the Gemara, okay, if that's the case that you're saying regarding Arusa, so now let's look at what it said in that Mishnah there. Another case was Shemeres Yavam. If so, the Chvasa, you're going to have to explain similar also, Gabi Shemeres Yavam. It said that the halacha of Saita applies also to a Shemeres Yavam. This woman that her husband passed away and she's waiting for the Yibum of the brother. So what are you going to say? So we had the problem over here. If her husband, if the Yavam never had relations with her, so how could there be any inyan of Saita if you have to have the relations of the husband before the seclusion of this other man? So you're going to have to say similar by the Shemeres Yavam, Shaba Aleh Yavam Bebeis Chamiyah, that this Yavam went and got married to her in Bebeis Chamiyah when she was still by his in-laws' house, meaning before he actually did the Yibum, but he came, he had relations with her b'derech znus, not l'shem the mitzvah of Yibum. He came and had relations with her b'derech znus already before. And that's why Saita could apply. Says the Gemara, but wait a minute, what's the halacha by a Yevama? If a Yavam and a Yevama have relations with one another, even b'derech znus, shemeres Yavam karesla, after he has relations with her, would she be still called a shemeres Yavam? That this is a time period that she's still waiting for the Yibum? After he has relations with her, even if it's b'derech znus, ishtoi ma'al yehi, she becomes a regular wife. This goes back to the halacha of the very first Mishnah of this Pedic, where it said, by a Yavam and a Yevama, when you have relations, even if it's beratzim, b'shoigig, b'meizid, b'aynis, even if it's b'derech znus, she becomes his regular wife. The Ha'amar Rav, and Rav said regarding the first Mishnah, if you remember we had a machlokes about this, Rav said, Kana lakail, that when the Mishnah said by a Yavam and a Yevama that he had relations with her b'derech znus, so the Mishnah said that the mitzvah takes effect, Rav says the mitzvah takes effect and he's kainer for everything, she becomes a regular wife for him. So how are we going to explain the pshat of here? Shemeres Yavam, and we have to say that he already had relations with her before, because otherwise the din of Saita doesn't apply, but then why is she called a Shemeres Yavam? She's already fully married to him. Says the Gemara, we're going to have to say that this Mishnah goes kishmul. It goes according to Shmuel. The Amar, Shmuel said, Leikana elo ledvarim ho'amurim beparsha. If you remember, Shmuel said that when it comes to this halacha, that even b'derech znus, a yavam is kaina a yavame, that's not for everything. She doesn't become his wife for everything. It's only regarding two things that are mentioned there in the parsha. The Yerusha, that a yavam is Yairish's brother, and also regarding the fact that the yibum is done, the mitzvah of yibum is done, and you don't need chalitza anymore, and so on. But not for anything else. But Legabe the Saita, we're going to say that she's still not his wife and he wasn't kaina her fully yet. So that Mishnah goes like Shmuel. But the Gemara asks on this, it doesn't work because Medihu Taime Elo Lerav. Our discussion that we're having over here, we're trying to figure out whether this Mishnah is a raya to which halacha, to the halacha of Yesh Chupel Psulais. And that who's the original opinion that said this? This was Rav, going back to Daf Nun Zayin, what we learned yesterday. Rav was that opinion that said, Yesh chupel psulai. So we're trying to figure out whether this Mishnah would be a raya to Rav's opinion. So now you're telling me you're explaining that Mishnah according to Shmuel. So we're trying to figure out according to Rav, and according to Rav it doesn't work. This Mishnah makes no sense. By the case of Shemeres Yavam, how could you say that there's a halacha of Saita if he already had relations with her before, so she's not a Shemeres Yavam? So Ha'amar Rav kana lakoil. Rav says that he's already kainer for everything. She's not a Shemeres Yavam anymore. So the Gemara answers, according to Rav, the Mishnah could still make sense. Hacha b'mayaskinon, this Mishnah, according to whose opinion does it go? Kagoin de avad ba maimer. This Yavam did not, what happened is, before he had relations with her, b'derech znus, he went and gave her maimer, which is the Kedusha Midrabanan. Now what happens if you gave her maimer, which is the Kedusha Midrabanan? So the Gemara now says, Beishamai hi. And this Mishnah goes specifically according to Beishamai's opinion. The Omri, Beishamai says, maimer kaine kinyin gomer. Once a Yavam gives his Yavama a maimer, it's not a Kedushin Midrabanan according to Beishamai. According to Beishamai, it's kaina a kinyan gomer, which means she becomes like a regular arusa. She becomes like his wife, like every Kedushin. She's the same thing, she's mu'ores him like a regular Kedushin. So Rashi explains, what's the significance of this now that we're following Beishamai's opinion? Our whole question was that when it comes to a Yavam and a Yavama, if you're going to say that the Yavam had relations with this Yavama b'derech znus, so she becomes a regular wife for him. She's not a Shemeres Yavam anymore. According to Rav, Kinyan Gomer. But now what the Gemara is saying is, according to Beishamai, after you do Maimer, this status of Yavam and Yevama is gone. Rashi says it flies away. It's not here anymore. The relation now between the Yavam and the Yevama is not anymore a relation of the regular relation of a Yavam and a Yevama. Now she becomes like a regular husband and wife, which is in the stage of Arusa. And therefore, if after that he has beer with her B'derech Znus, the beer B'derech Znus will not be kaina. When is the beer B'derech Znus kaina and completely kaina, like Rav holds? That's only when there's a relation between a Yavam and a Yevama. There's the pasuk that it says in the parish of Yevama that it's kaina for everything, according to Rav. But over here, according to Beis Shammai, once you do Maimer, so now that changes the whole relationship between them. They're not anymore like a Yavam and a Yevama. So over here, she's just like a regular Arusa. So therefore, over here, in this case, the Bias Znos is not going to be kaina her completely to be his wife 100%, and therefore we could still call her a shemeres yavam because she's not yet fully married to him. The term shemeres means she's still an arusa and she's not yet fully married to him. That's the pshat according to Rav, so the Mishnah could still make sense. So the Gemara asks, wait a minute, if that's the pshat here, that he gave her kiddushin, and therefore she becomes like a regular arusa, ihachi hainu arusa. So if so, the case of shemeres yavam is identical to the case of arusa. Why does the Mishnah say both? So the Gemara says on that, so l'tai meich, and according to your question you're asking me now, that Arusa and Shemeres Yavam is the same thing, Nesua uknusa. Lav chadamilsi, the Mishnah that is, also says over there are two cases, Nesua, that you have the din of Saita after a person fully marries his wife, and Knusa, the din of Saita after a Yavam fully marries his Yavama. Aren't they the exact same thing? It's his wife. Ma'inaf gemina if it's his wife that he married, or it's a wife that was a Yevama that he now fully married, but it's the same thing. Ella, so the only difference is Nisua didei. Nisua means this is the wife that he chose and he married, and Knusa the Chavre. Knusa means it's the same thing. It's his full wife, but it came from his brother. The Chavre means over here from his brother. But really, in essence, it's the same thing. So hachanami, so over here as well, when it says in the Mishnah, Arusa and Shemeres Yavim, it's taka the same thing. Arusa means the day. Arusa means his wife that he chose. And Shemeres Yavim, the Chavre. Shemeres Yavim means the wife that's now a regular Arusa to him, but it came from his brother. But it's hachanami, it's the same thing. So anyways, the point over here is, the conclusion of the Gemara is that the Mishnah makes sense according to Rav, and therefore we could use that Mishnah as a raya to what Rav said, that yesh chuppah lepsulais. Because over here, the only way that the din of Saita would apply is if the husband made a chuppah without bia. Because if he made bia, then the ish is not menuke miyavain. He had bia after she was suspected to be a Saita. He's not allowed to have bia with her after she's suspected to be a Saita. So therefore we have a raya from here that yesh chuppah lepsulais. Now the Gemara is going to bring another two pshatim in that Mishnah, and that it's not necessarily a raya to Rav. Rav Papa says, Hi Tanahu. The Tana of that Mishnah does not hold of any of those limitations that we said before regarding the halacha of Saita. He holds like the Tana of this Braisa, the Tanya, and we learned in the Braisa as follows: Ein maknin la arusa la ashkaisa keshehi arusa. You can't warn an arusa not to go and seclude herself with another person in order to give her the waters to drink when she's still an arusa. Aval makninaisa, but the arusa could warn her lashkaisa then to give her to drink the waters of the Saita keshehi nesua after she gets married. Which means that this Braisa basically is saying 2 points. Number one, even if the husband does have relations with his wife after she's suspected of being a Saita, the din of Saita still applies. He doesn't hold of that drasha we said before, ha'ish menukim avin. And also, he doesn't hold of the other drasha that we said, that you have to have kodma shchivas baal lebayil, that only if the baal had relations with his wife before the bayil, only then the Saita apply. He doesn't hold of those two limitations. That's the Tana of this Mishnah, and therefore the problems that we had before are not a problem b'chlal. So if that's the case, then this Mishnah will not be a raya to Rav b'chlal. Or another pshat Gemara here says, Rav Nachman by Yitzchak Amar. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak says the pshat over here in this Mishnah is al yedei gilgol. That when it says over here that he has to swear that he did not have relations, that she did not have relations with anyone else when she was an arusa, it doesn't mean that he's giving her to drink the water when she's an arusa, or if he warned her when she's an arusa, and then later he got married to her, because then you're going to have problems. It's talking about a regular saita after he got married to her, with a regular saita. Elamai, once he's making a swear, a about what happened to her. In a regular Saita, he's already Megalgal, he also rolls upon her, that's the literal translation of Gilgul, he also has a swear regarding when she was an Arusa. But Enochanami, in the case of Arusa itself, there's no din of Saita. Once she's swearing in the regular case of a Saita, he's Megalgal on her, he also makes a swear regarding the time period when she was an Arusa. So again, it's not a raya to Rav. Talk to Gemara, Shalach, Rav Chanine, Mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Chanine sent a halach in the name of Rabbi Yochanan as follows. Ha'isa maimer b'yevimtai. If you have a Yevama, and one, so you have, let's say, a Yevama, and there are two brothers that can do Yibum for this Yevama. And now one of the brothers gave maimer, gave this Kiddushin midrabanon to the Yevama. And v'yesh loy ach, and there's another brother that was there, that did not give the maimer, and that other brother is there. So now the halach is going to be afilahu kayin, even if that other brother is a kayin. So in other words, you have these two brothers; they're both kayinim, and one brother did maimer, and vihi kayanes, and this woman that he did maimer for, she's a bas kayin, and if she's a bas kayin, she can eat truma from her father's house. Pasla min truma. But now that one of the brothers gave maimer, he's going to passel her from truma. Why does he passel her for truma? So Rashi explains, the svar over here would be, because once one brother does maimer, and that maimer is a kedushin midrabanon, she now has a isser, it now passels her of getting married to the other brother midrabanon. Because midrabanon, the maimer for one brother took effect, so even though it only took effect midrabanon, and minat Torah, she's still connected to both of these brothers. But to the other brother that did not do maimer for her, she becomes possible to have any relations with him. So because she becomes pasul midrabanan to have relations with this kayin, that itself is enough of a reason to passel her from eating truma. So the Gemara says, no, this doesn't make sense. So the Gemara, Laman, according to who did he send this halacha? Rab Meir, did he send this halacha according to Rab Meir? Rab Meir. When did Rab Meir say that when you have a kedushin, and the kedushin is that this woman is now waiting to have relations with a kayin that's possible for her. So when did Rab Meir say that would passel her from eating trumah? Mishtameres lebi psula. That's if there's a woman that would be passel minat Torah to get married to this kayin, and she's waiting. She has a kedushin and she's waiting for that bia, so she already becomes passel to eat the trumah. So lay achla again mishtameres lebi psula lay achla mid'iraisa. So then she doesn't eat the truma, but that's only mid'iraisa, meaning that this bia is pasal mid'iraisa. Then I say, if she's waiting to have bia with this kind that's pasal to mid'iraisa, she's pasal to eat truma. The Rabbanon miyama, but over here, the fact that one brother did maimah for her, and because of this, it pasals her of having bia with the other brother, which is a kayin, and that's only a psul mid'Rabbanon, that's not a reason to pasal her from eating truma. Says the Gemara ve'el al Rabbi Elazar Rab Shimon. Now, what are you going to say that this halacha that Rab Chanina sent in the name of Rabbi Yochanan was according to Rabbi Elazar and Rab Shimon? What did Rabbi Elazar and Rab Shimon say? And Rab Shimon say, "Sarahashta mishtameres labi psula da'iraisa achla." They said that even if she made a kedushin to a kayin and she's puzzled to him and she's waiting to have bia with him, even though it's a psul da'iraisa, she could still eat trumah. The Rabbanon Mibaya over here, where the whole psul she has now to this brother or kayin is only a psul with the Rabbanon to have relations with him, for sure she should still be able to eat trumah. So Ella, so therefore the Gemara changes this. Ki asa Ravin, so Amar Ravin said that this is the halacha. Asa ba maimer biyavimtai. If this Yavam did maimer, he gave this kedushin with the Rabbanon to his Yevame, so then you're right. Divrei akail achla, everybody would agree that she could still eat trumah. Now, but however, the halacha over here is as follows: Yesh loy ach chalal. But if one brother did maimer, he gave maimer for this Yevama, and now there's another brother that's a chalal, that's a kayin, but he's a chalal. Divrei akail einay cheles. Then everybody would agree that he does not, that she cannot eat truma. Why? Because she's waiting to get married to this brother that's a chalal. Even though the other brother did maimer for her, but maimer only worked midrabanan, so therefore she's still not connected to this brother, which is a chalal, and therefore she cannot eat truma. So Rashi, one second, before I go weiter, Rashi over here explains that in this case, everybody would agree Rab Meir, Rab Elazar, Rab Shimon, everybody would agree that it passes her from eating truma. And the reason is, Rab Meir holds when you make a kiddushin and she's waiting to have relations with a kohen which is possible to her, it passes her from eating truma. Even according to Rab Elazar and Rab Shimon that say that in such a case she would still be able to eat truma, but over here she can't, because over there it's talking about a kohen that's not a chalal. And so the Gemara said before the svara, that kohen could be machal truma to somebody else. But over here we're talking about a chalal. A chalal can't be machal truma to anybody. So therefore if she's waiting for this chalal, she still has a connection to this chalal, and this chalal can't be machal truma to anybody, she will not be able to eat truma. So therefore divrei koil einay cheles. Loi nachluku. Now there's a machlokes here, as the Gemara brings here, between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Where is this machlokes? Elo shenasan lo get. What happens is if Yavam gave his Yevama a get. So now if you remember what we learned before in the Masechta, what happens if the Yavam gives the Yevama a get? Minatayra, the get doesn't take effect b'chlal. But midrabanan, that get now doesn't allow him to get married to her. She becomes possible to get married to this kohen. So Rabbi Yochanan says, Echeles, she can still eat truma. Rish Lakish Amar, Einay Echeles. Rish Lakish says, if you had this kohen that was a Yavam, and she was a bas kohen, a Yavama, and he gave her a get, and now that passes her from having relations with this kohen, midrabanan, it passes her from having relations with this kohen. Here there's the machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. And the Gemara explains, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Echeles, Rabbi Yochanan says she could still eat truma, because Afil Rab Meir da Amar, Einay Echeles, even Rab Meir that says, that in a case when there was a kiddushin, and she's waiting to get married to a kohen that's possible to her, she can't eat any truma. Hani mili mishtameres lebi psula da'iraisa. That's in that case because she's waiting to get married to a kohen, and it's a bia psula min atayra. Like the case of the Mishnah, was a grusha to a kohen. Avol derabanan, but over here in this case, when the Yavam gave a get to the Yevama, and now midrabanan, he can't have relations with her. Midrabanan, she's waiting to get married to her. She's still a Yevama, but midrabanan, she can't have relations with him. So this is only a psul midrabanan. So therefore, achla, she can still eat truma. Rish Lakish Amar, Rish Lakish says, Einay cheles. No, she cannot eat any truma. Afil Rabbi Elazar of Rab Shimon da Amri, Eicheles, even according to Rabbi Elazar and Rab Shimon that say that she could eat truma when she's in a situation, when she's waiting to have relations with a kohen that's possible to her. Hani mili the yesh loy lahachel b'makim acher. That's only in a case where we see that this kohen, he has a koyach to be mekadesh another isha that's not possible to him, and he could be machal truma. Aval hacha, but over here, kivin the ein loy lahachel b'makim acher loy. Over here, this kohen that gave a get to this Yevama, there's no way that a kohen could ever be machal truma to a woman through giving a get. There's no such a concept. You usually could only be machal truma through bia or through kiddushin, but not through a get. Over here, there's a unique situation. You have this bas kohen. She was eating truma before because she's a bas kohen, and now he gives her a get, and now through this get he would be machal truma. He's not machal truma. You don't find such a thing that it could be machal truma b'makam achad through giving a get. So therefore, over here, if the Yavam gave a get to this Yevama and he passels her now from having relations with him, that itself passels her from eating truma. Again, aval hacha kivin the ein loy la'achal b'makam acher loy. Over here, through giving this get, he can't be machal truma through this in another place, so she can't eat any truma. If you'll argue and say hachanami yesh loy lahachil, over here as well, through a get, there is a case where a kohen gives a get to his wife, which is a bas kohen, and through the get that he gives her, the get itself causes that she can go and eat truma. When is that? B'chayzeres. If this bas kohen that a husband was married to, that a husband was married to her, and he gives her a get, what happens when he gives her a get? She goes back to her father's house. A bas kohen that goes back to her father's house is able to eat truma. So I see that there is this concept that a kohen gives a get to his wife, a bas kohen, and through the get, she goes back to the father's house and she can eat truma. So the Gemara says that's a different thing. That's not connected to what we're talking about. Chayzeres, over there when he gives her a get, and because of that she can go and eat truma, paska minei. So that's, he's severing the relation to him, v'kroiva lebeinasha. And now she's a relative, she goes back to her father's house. That's what beinasha means. She goes back to her father's house, and therefore she eats truma over there in her father's house. She doesn't eat truma as a result of her connection to her husband. Adarabah, the get cuts her off from her husband. Aval ha agidebe. What are we talking about over here? About a yavam and a yavama. Here you want to say something else. That the yavama is connected to the yavam. And now that the yavam gave a get to this yavama, even after he gives her a get, minat Torah, he's still connected to her. Minat Torah, the get didn't have any effect. But because midrabanan, it passled her of having relations with him, so therefore that's enough of reason to passel her from eating truma. Because now she's puzzled to have bia with this kayin. So that, you don't find such a concept. You don't see such a thing that through the get, that he should passel her from eating truma. So therefore, over here I say that it's because of the get. Again, you don't find such a thing that a get is machal truma. Again, you don't find that through giving a get, it's machal truma b'makom acher. So therefore, over here, through this get, it's going to passel her from eating the truma.